On the 25th of August, 17-year-old Lisa went out for a night with her friends in the capital of the Netherlands, which is something that every 17-year-old does, right? At 3 o'clock, she decided it would be time to go home, and where her friends took a taxi, she took a bike. I mean, at the end of the day, she was a Dutchie, right? Only she never got home, because she was brutally taken off her bike by a migrant and brutally murdered. And mind you, this migrant, only a couple of days before, raped another woman. What we're seeing here, unfortunately, is a pattern of abuse, rape, and abductions of women. And as we've seen in Dresden, where a brave hero tried to protect a woman from sexual harassment, this is not only a problem that women or children are facing, but also men. I'm very grateful that with me today is Daniel de Liever. He is one of the best Dutch reporters that we have. So Daniel, thank you so much for your time and for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me on. It's always good to be back, even though the subject we're talking about indeed is very tragic.
It's true, because, first and foremost, the biggest problem that I have with this is the attitude of our politicians. You reported it recently in this week that the mayor of Amsterdam, Femke Halsema, is falsely representing some statistics in which it looks like the Dutch men are overrepresented in rape and not men from example countries like Iraq or Syria. You know, these numbers they're not rightfully presented to people, yet some people do believe it. But this cherry picking shows that they try to rub the real issue under the blankets. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yes, it's a very good point that you're making, and let's be honest. We see everywhere at the moment on many topics, sadly on the left and on the right, that people are using tragedy for political win. We also see this with the tragic loss of this girl's life. She just finished her high school. She was about to start her life. And as a young father myself, it really hit me. And indeed, we have a Green Left mayor here in Amsterdam. And she's one of the people, like you said, that definitely has a hard time accepting this. She says it's a shame on our people, on our society. In a sense, it's true, but she's not taking any responsibility here. This happened under her watch. This asylum seeker, we still don't know his identity. The people have said that he's from Eritrea or from Nigeria. We don't know yet, because he was illegally staying at this asylum center. He was not one of the people that was supposed to be there. Anyway, this happened anyway. Sadly, it is, of course, we still have to have the lawsuit. So we don't know 100% for sure. But what it seems right now is that he raped one girl, potentially raped the second one, and then murdered Lisa. It's very tragic to think about this. And what the hard fact people don't want to face is it's now being seen as if we have a problem with all men. And let me make this clear. Of course, there are also European men that rape and murder women, and we should be very hard towards that. And I think nobody should excuse that. But what people find uncomfortable is that for decades, there's an overrepresentation of migrants from other cultures that have a very different view on the balance between men and women. And this makes it that we have sexual violence and murder cases have skyrocketed among these immigration groups. And recently there was in the Netherlands this newspaper from 1996 from a left-wing paper called Trouw. And they even said back then that between 50 and 75% of the rape cases were done with people with nationalities that were not originally from the Netherlands. And we see the same thing, that people now make up the lie that they say in absolute numbers, there's still more Europeans committing these crimes. And it is true, because we have, luckily, if you ask me, still so many more people from countries that have the same culture as us, so European cultures, than from other groups. But if you would have the same amount of people from, say, let's say the Netherlands and from Eritrea or Syria or Iraq, we would have 10 to 25 times, I'm not kidding, as many murder and rape cases.
10 to 25 times. Those are shocking statistics. And honestly, Daniel, I'm shocked the fact that in 1996, the year that I was born, this was already known. We're talking about almost 3 decades. 3 decades. Imagine how many women we could have protected if they would have done something about it. And I do blame the left on this, because the left, they never want to acknowledge that mass migration is not working. It doesn't work if you allow people to enter our continent that do not have the same values and principles as we do. And now they say, and this is how they always use it, because they're very smart with using language. They understand that language is the most powerful tool there is. They frame it as femicide. And it is femicide, but it's femicide committed by a particular group of people. So just by addressing and saying, oh, it's femicide, you don't really change anything with it. But that's the thing. They don't want to take any responsibility on this. I really wonder all the time, why do we even allow these people to enter then? Because it is pure suicide, actually. I mean, look at, for example, in Asia, I think in Japan, only 0.2 people who live in Japan are not Asian. In Korea, the number is 0.3. Is it racism? No, it's just they understand that these suicide policies don't work.
Yes, that is true. The only nuance I would make here is that, for example, we have in the Netherlands, we have a big community of people from Indonesia, for example, because Indonesia used to be one of the colonies of the Netherlands. And you don't see that this is a problem. So you have people, especially from some Asian countries, Japan is one of them, or China is another one of them, Korea. If they come to the Netherlands or to other European countries, then actually they integrate very well, because they have, to a certain degree, the same amount of values and norms, or at least are much closer to it, to all of the tribal countries, in especially Africa and the Middle East. And this is indeed uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that these people are inferior. This is always what people on the left try to make it seem, as if it is a thing about race or about superiority. No, it is simply that we have certain values here in Europe, in the Netherlands, in other countries across the West that we like to keep. And to do that, like, culture is a living thing. It means a culture is only alive if you have people actually living it. So if you have a lot of people coming in from Syria, then we're going to have Syrian culture in the Netherlands. It's not rocket science, and we're seeing it more and more.
And another tragic thing that happened, and I really want to applaud you for this, Daniel, because it was only your channel, NieuwRechts, that spoke out about this issue, and now it's finally being picked up. It's about a 17-year-old girl, Lisa. No, sorry, not Lisa, a 15-year-old girl. I'm sorry, there's too many things happening. 15-year-old girl. This is a minor girl. She was in the hands of a lover boy, mind you, who's also a migrant. He's only 18. Even though he's just barely legal himself, he already understands how to abduct a child and put her in such a vulnerable position. And what really pissed me off, and I'll just say it pissed me off, is the attitude of the police saying this is not a life-threatening situation. Now, thank God she's found. She has some bruises, but thank God she is alive. But he was found with a lot of drugs, with a weapon, and the police is saying that this is not life-threatening. I mean, the fact that they're saying that, and then 2 days later, another girl from 17 years old get murdered, shows you that women are facing a life-threatening situation here in the Netherlands.
So it is really hard to know. One of the challenges that we all have as journalists, but also if you're just a citizen who wants to know what's going on in your own country, is that there is, of course, a difference in power when it comes to information. We, as journalists and as people of goodwill, really need to work hard to get the right information. And I want to say I have a lot of respect for, policemen that do a lot of good work. There are many of them that are hardworking. So this is not against the police, but sadly, just as a lot of our institutions are corroding, this also sadly happens within the police. And indeed, it's ridiculous that if you have a girl who's missing, because her family reported her missing, we didn't know beforehand that it was going to end well. God forbid, she could also have been injured or worse, murdered. And we see just that this is, quite similar on a very small scale to what we saw with the grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, that there's a very different aspect of how some people, and this was a Syrian, but also from other countries, like in the UK from Pakistan, how they look at women. And especially Western, non-Muslim women are just seen as inferior, and we should be open about it. If we want to preserve the value that men and women in our society are equal, we cannot have this. And the fact that the police, only after it happens, can say, oh, nothing bad happened. Of course, you can say that afterwards, but you could not know beforehand. And imagine that you are this girl's family. She's gone for a few days. You don't know what happened to her. For all you know, she's dead. And then nobody is out there who really understands that. And it's supposed to be the government who nowadays really intervenes in all of our lives more and more, where they shouldn't. The one thing they should intervene is by making sure that we are as safe as possible. And of course, we don't have a perfect world, but at least when something happens, they need to be very strict to the perpetrator.
Daniel, I think that one thing that you said, I think this is the most crucial thing. The government intervenes with everything. The messages that you're sending, the content that you're reading, how much money you are using, what you're using your money on, what car you're driving. But this basic thing, this is the only thing that why they have legitimacy, is to keep us safe. That's the only thing they don't care about. And they're betraying us. And you know what? I think there's a turning point. People are fed up. Enough has been enough. So there has been a call for mass deportations of illegal migrants. Do you think that is a solution?
Yes and no. I've recently talked a lot about this. I think we need two things at the same time. And I think people will focus on the easy thing, which ironically is mass deportation, but not on the more difficult thing. So let's start with the mass deportation. Yes, a lot of people that cannot integrate here, that don't integrate here, they don't belong here. So this lover boy from the AZC, I would say goodbye, go back to Syria. We shouldn't care how miserable his life is there. It might sound harsh, but the fact that he's coming here is trying to coerce young girls means that there's no place for him and for any other migrant that does these kind of thing. So that is going to already change a lot. Second of all, as we see now in Europe, we have limited resources. We should first be spending our resources on our own people. We are having a lot of housing problems with people that cannot get normal wages, etc. So for that reason, also people that have are not criminal should not stay on a mass scale in our countries. I think that is sensible if you really are a government for your own people. But at the same time, let's say now that we'll get all the problematic people out of our countries. Then we're not there yet. We have eroded our societies. We are going towards low-trust societies, which is what you see in countries like in the Middle East. And by getting these people out of there, it's not magically going to turn back into high-functioning, high-trust societies. For that, we really need to build up our institutions to a point that they are trustworthy again. And I think people want this, but people are underestimating how difficult this will be as long as we don't have any good ideas. So I would, ask people on the right, like myself, to think also, what are we going to do once we solve this migration crisis? Because yes, we need to solve it. I think it will happen because the majority of people want it, and it's common sense, but we need more than that.
Beautifully said, Daniel. And I think what you're addressing is true. We think only of the short-term solution, but we need to think long-term, even when we have mass deportations, what after? Because trust has already been eroded. In the Netherlands, you just published the statistics. It's 4% of the people that still have trust in our government, which is not a surprise after all of the scandals. I have one more question for you. We're talking about the different facets, parts of this problem. One of them, of course, is the lack of accountability of the politicians, the attitude of the police, but also the judges. A lot of them, they're in favor of D66, which is a very Dutch, I would say the ultimate Dutch establishment party. What they're doing is actually giving these criminals a lower sentence so they don't have to leave the country. With that, they're upholding a problem. They're upholding a system that allows these criminals to enter our country. The question is, how do we deal with that? Because we're dealing with a bigger problem than only open borders.
It's a good point. And to demonstrate it, let me give an example that happened recently in the Netherlands. We had parents from Eritrea that were heavily hitting their children with sticks. I'm not talking about any corrective hits that was kind of normal in Western Europe before, or is still normal in a lot of Eastern Europe. No, I'm talking about actually hitting full force your children with sticks. And they went, they were sued. They had to go to the court, and then they said, this is just part of our culture. And basically, they got a lower sentence because of it, because of the cultural reasons, which is ridiculous, of course, because if you whip your child with sticks repeatedly, then of course you should be punished by how severe that actually is. Now to your question about how we can deal with it. The problem is that it's very difficult to deal with this, because you see, when we want more conservative or right-wing policy, it gets, by all the institutions that want to keep the current thing in place, it gets stopped. You see this in all countries, like you see at the courts in Italy, when the deal to get immigrants to Albania is stopped over and over. We see this on a European level with the European Commission, European courts. So it's a very, very big problem. And I think there are two ways to look at it. Either we have to replace these people, like you see happening now in America, with a lot of institutions basically being swept out, what they call the deep state, where they're just going for all these institutions and they bring in their own people to balance it out. I think short term this can work. Long term, why wouldn't the left do the same thing? And again, if there's, for example, a Democrat president in America, why wouldn't he just sweep everything out that already was put in place? So I think this is only to buy time. I think at the same time, what we need to do, we need to make people aware that we are in a serious crisis. I think we are in a crisis that is fundamental to our core of how we want to live as society. I think we have had the same model for the last 250 years of basically building up the nation state and the democracy that comes with it. But the complexity of our current institutions make it that we need to rethink how we want to basically make a system in which we can balance out the will of the people and the institutions. And I think we have not found an answer to it. There are certain people now that are trying to talk about it, but I think this is the question we need to ask ourselves and where the solutions will come. It's not the most satisfying answer, because I don't have the ultimate answer yet, but I do believe that this is the way forward. And I think in 10, 20 years, this will be the major issue when we have long forgotten about the current crisis, for example, with immigrants, when we have dealt with that.
Daniel, I want to thank you so much. And I really want to encourage all of our viewers to follow you at X at Daniel de Liever. But also, if you are Dutchy, please follow NieuwRechts. I will not hide the truth, which is that I take a lot of inspiration of the articles that you're writing, because you're actually one of the very few honest platforms that we have in the Netherlands. So thank you so much for your amazing work, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you.